We are continuing in the Sermon on the Mount, looking at Jesus talking really about ethics. And when we talk about ethics, that's just a fancy schmancy word for talking about behavior. And Jesus is trying to teach us what Christian behavior ought to look like. And so he's been talking about things like anger and lust and being a person of your word and integrity. And today we're going to see Jesus talking about radical generosity and letting people have what is rightfully ours to reclaim. And there are psychological and physiological impacts on human beings when we try to pursue revenge. When we try to get payback, it affects us. And it can hurt and damage our soul if we are so bent on revenge that that's the only thing we pursue. And people who are smarter than I run studies that show that when we are engaged in revenge and payback, then it can heighten negative emotions and hurt our mental health. So there is a very real world benefit to learning how to live with radical generosity and forgiveness and letting go of the idea of getting payback. And that's what Jesus is going to try to teach us. In Matthew chapter 5, we're starting at verse 38. And if you've been at the chapel for the last few weeks as we've been going through this, remember, Jesus has this pattern where he says, this is what it used to be like, but now I'm going to take it up a notch. The old law says this, but now how can we make it even more personal to us? And he's going to do that here again. Matthew 5:38. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Now that comes right from the Old Testament. Jesus is talking about the old law where if someone did damage to you, you could claim restitution. You could get payback for someone doing something to you. If someone causes you to lose a tooth, you can claim a tooth from them. If someone causes you to lose an eye, you can claim an eye from them. If someone kills your cow, you can claim a cow from them. And the Old Testament law was set up for fair play and equality. Everybody likes fair play, right? So if someone takes from you, you can have that restored to you from them. And there's an expression we even have in English, turnabout is fair play. If you did it to me, it's fair that it happens to you also. That's the old law, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And Jesus says, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. I think that there are a few things that Jesus would have us learn from this. And the first thing that Jesus wants us to understand is that we got to let go of retaliation. That urge within us for payback. If somebody comes at us, we step right back. And in our culture, we love that. Spend any time on social media and you'll see everybody loves the clap back, right? We love to see it. Even if we aren't involved, we love to see people engage in this kind of thing. Someone attacks somebody else and we love to see the clap back. Someone just coming right back with an insult or a slam. And it's really this fight for honor that we watch on social media. Like someone attacks your honor and you're like, my honor! And so you come right back and fight them. And Jesus is trying to tell us here, let go of retaliation. Don't resist the evil person. If somebody slaps you on the right cheek, now you think about that. If they're going to slap you on the right cheek, they wouldn't use their left hand because the left hand is the dirty hand. That's your wiping hand, right? So you're going to use your right hand to slap. So if they're going to slap you on your right cheek, it's a backhanded slap. It's a huge insult. If you ever watch old cartoons, you can see Bugs Bunny, right, trying to insult Elmer Fudd. And he takes a white glove and he slaps Elmer Fudd with the white glove. It's an insult to his honor. Jesus is saying if somebody slaps you and they're insulting your honor, don't fight back. Turn the other cheek also. Like, oh, you hit me here? All right, bring it on. Let's go. What have you got? If someone is actively attempting a major insult, trying to humiliate you, Jesus says, you got to let that go. And when you are turning that other cheek to them, you're laying down your right for vindication. You are intentionally challenging the insult and saying, did you mean to do that? You want to do more? Bring that on. Jesus says, let go of the idea of retaliation. This is what the Apostle Paul is talking about in his letter to the Romans. In Romans chapter 12, he says, don't take revenge, my dear friends. Leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. What he's really trying to get at is that you don't have to worry about making sure that you get yours, because God has got you. And ultimately, what this comes down to is this concept right here. Do you trust in yourself to take care of your needs, or are you trusting in God to take care of you? Because if you are trusting God to handle your life and to cover everything you need, then if somebody comes in and insults your honor, you don't have to worry about it. Say, God has got me. If somebody comes in and smacks you around a little bit, you don't have to pursue revenge. Because our confidence is not in our ability to make sure I get mine. I'm going to make sure that I stick up for myself. Our confidence is in God. It's not our place to address these personal attacks and injustices. You got to stay in your lane. God's lane is covering us, providing for us, and taking care of us. Our place is to practice radical generosity. Now, a lot of times when we talk about generosity, we think about giving things away, like money or stuff. But Jesus called the generosity is about our attitude and how we deal when other people come at us, and how we give to other people grace and forgiveness. This is a radical generosity that Jesus is calling us to. If someone comes to strike you, let it go. Do not be the kind of person that pursues revenge. The second thing I think Jesus wants us to understand is to embrace forgiveness and to go the extra mile. That's an expression that we use today. It comes from Jesus, to go the extra mile. That's what he's talking about here in verse 40. If anyone would sue you, take your tunic, let him have your cloak. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. And in the ancient world, Roman soldiers could conscript people on the side, say, hey, I need you to carry my pack for a mile. They were authorized to make people carry their pack for a mile. And then the soldier would have to take their stuff back. And we've all done road marches. We've all carried packs for miles and miles. It sucks, right? And when you get to my age, it's not any easier. And so you're still humping with a heavy pack on. And it would be nice to see someone on the side of the road say, hey, you know what, man? I'm going to give you my pack for a mile. I can do that because I'm a troop. And the government has authorized me to do that. Can you imagine if the command authorized you to grab any civilian on the side of the road and say, hey, dude, carry my pack? I'm a Marine. I can do that. And so Jesus is saying, if that happens to you, if you get conscripted to carry someone's pack against your will, practice radical generosity. Don't just do the 1 mile, go above and beyond. Go the extra mile. Now, what is your right? Your right is to say, you can only force me to do 1. You can't make me do any more than that. That is my right. Jesus says, let go of rights. Someone has forced you to do something you don't want. Let go of your rights. Practice radical generosity and give even more. That whole line about someone taking your cloak and giving him your tunic, you only wear in 2 pieces back in the ancient world. If they take your outer garment and you've only got the one piece left, Jesus says, give them your undergarments too. Where does that leave you? Buck naked, right? It's almost like Jesus is saying, haha, joke's on them. They want to take it? Let's go. Jesus says radical generosity says, I am not going to sweat making sure that I've got mine because I'm going to trust God instead. It's not my lane to insist on my rights. My lane is to follow God and live the kind of life that Jesus is calling us to live. My lane is to practice radical generosity. My lane is to be a humble servant. God's lane is to pay back. God's lane is to make sure that all the wrongs are eventually righted. And the sad truth is, we may never have that kind of righteousness, all the wrongs being made right in our lifetime. Right? Sometimes we face the consequences of our own behavior. Sometimes we face the consequences of other people's behavior. Why are you all here in camis on Tier 3 Libo? You're facing the consequences of somebody else's stupid choices. Like, wait a minute, I didn't do that. I just rolled in. It was some other Marine who was being a doo-doo head. Now I've got to pay the consequences? Yeah. Sometimes consequences are because of our own behavior. Sometimes consequences are because of other people's behavior. Sometimes the consequences we face are because of the randomness of life. And there is no guarantee that life is going to be easy just because you believe in God. But Jesus even says himself, I tell you the truth, in this world, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have problems. You're going to be persecuted. Life is going to be rough. Jesus made that promise. There's no easy living for people who believe. Life is not good just because you believe in God. And if Jesus has promised that life is going to get hard, guess what that means, guys? You can count on it. Life will get hard. But it's not our lane to force our rights. One day, we have faith and hope that God will restore everything and bring balance and order to the world. It's not you who's got to bring balance to the force. God will bring balance one day. And we trust God to do what he has said he would do, and we just stay in our lane. And the third thing I think that we can really get from this piece is that we can give generously above and beyond what is expected. And really it comes down to the heart. And throughout the Sermon on the Mount here, the few chapters of Matthew that we're looking at, this is what Jesus is talking about. The Old Testament law was about the concrete behavior, the rights and wrongs, the letter of the law, very rigid, very legalistic. And Jesus says, we're not changing that. Now we're going to amplify it and make it about the condition of your heart. When people ask from you, give above and beyond. You encounter someone who needs help, don't do the bare minimum, go above and beyond. This could be something simple, like for a friend or a family member. This could be something that you do for a stranger. You see a need, you meet the need. Jesus calls us to radical generosity in all of life. Not focusing on what I am owed, my rights, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You can't do that to me. Don't you know what my rights are? I know my rights. Jesus calls us to lay down our rights. Now, let's be really honest here. This is hard for Americans. We are raised on this concept of my rights. I know my rights. I've got a Bill of Rights. We live by my rights. I've got property rights. I've got personal rights. My rights, my rights. And Jesus says, let it go, dude. Let it go. Your rights are not as important as following Jesus' call to living the Christian life. So we can intentionally lay down our rights to serve others, to take care of others, to make the world a better place. where we practice grace, we practice forgiveness. We let go of what I am owed and say, hey, you took that from me, you must need something. How can I help you even more? That's why it's called radical generosity. It's not just the bare bones, it is so far above. And we trust that in time, God will make everything right again. Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke, give and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. We trust that God will make everything right and that will restore everything, either in this life or in eternity. We don't know. I can't put my time frame onto God. I just got to trust that God's got it. But we do have faith and hope that He will make it right. So this morning, my challenge to you is as we try to embody Christian behavior, let us trust God's justice. Let us trust God's timing, letting go of our rights, choosing to practice radical generosity. And we can see not only our lives transformed, not only our commands transformed, but the community around us transformed. And we can live this kind of life that Jesus calls us to. And we find we end up building each other up instead of insisting on our rights and tearing each other down. May our lives be a testament to the transformative power that God can have when we start living this kind of radical life. My challenge to you this week is to take a hard look in the mirror and ask, what have you been demanding for your own rights? Either on the job, with friends, with family, how have you been insisting on, this is what I'm owed? These are my rights. And how is Jesus calling you to let those rights go, to live in faith and trusting God to take care of you no matter what happens? We got to ask that hard question this week. So look in the mirror and say, Jesus, how do you want me to let go of my rights so that I can live in radical generosity and serve other people?